So we're going to be talking about commercial flights to space, specifically Spaceship One and Spaceship Two. So what are commercial flights? They're used to transport passengers or cargo. They're the flights that like we all take. They became popular around the 1950s, and there's roughly over 100,000 flights per day, varying on like weather and stuff. And the largest commercial flight is the Airbus A380-800, and it holds up to 853 passengers. So, Spaceship One, this is Spaceship One, this little thing right here, and this is White Knight, all the rest of it. This is Spaceship Two, and this is White Knight 2. So the purpose of Spaceship One and Spaceship Two is space tourism, which is going to space for recreational purposes. So basically like for our enjoyment, but like the Virgin Galactic can use it for like missions and other stuff. It'll be suborbital space tourism, which means, so orbital is you go and you orbit the Earth like many times, you can stay up there for many days. And suborbital, you can go around once, but your like intent is to just go till you fall back in. So some of them go around once, but Spaceship One and Spaceship Two won't go the whole ways around. And their objective is to make low-cost routine access to space a regular thing. So who invented the spacecraft? Spaceship One was designed and built by Scaled Composites. This is an aerospace company that's designed by aerospace designer Burt Rutan. The development was also backed by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. He gave $20 million, and he was super interested in space, so he like helped them with everything. And it was also funded by Virgin Galactic, but not that much. They weren't really involved. So Spaceship Two, it was also designed and built by Scaled Composites. They still have credit, but they don't own it, which is the aerospace company owned by Burt Rutan. But so now the spaceship company owns Spaceship Two, which I'll talk about later. So Spaceship One accomplishments. It's the first private manned reusable spacecraft. So what this means is it's flown by humans and it's funded by something other than the government. The government doesn't really fund sending people to space for like recreational purposes like this ever since the Columbia accident. I don't know if anyone knows about that. I'll talk about that also. There's been 3 successful flights in 2004. There were 17 in all, but they didn't succeed to get to space till the 15th one. The major turning point for it was June 21st, 2004. This is the first time it made it into space past the Kármán line. So the Kármán line is a line used to try to define the boundary of space. There's a lot of room in space that all looks the same. So who's to say if you're in space or not? It's 62 miles up, and that's 330,000 feet. This is defined by the FAI, which is the World Air Sports Federation. It's important for legal and prizes and stuff, saying you made it to space basically. But NASA and Air Force, they define this line at 50 miles for their own purpose, kinda, so they get more credit. It also won the Ansari X Prize in 2004. Spaceship's 2 accomplishments. Their first glide flight was in October 10th, 2010. So what glide flight means is it's just kind of for practice. It's when White Knight takes it up and drops it at 50,000 feet, and it doesn't turn its engines on, it just glides down. So this is also used to practice aborting missions. If something's wrong with it, it'll just glide down. Its first powered flight was April 29th, 2013. Their 4th attempt on a powered flight was in October 2014, and it blew up and killed one of their pilots. So they took a 3.5-year break, and they didn't start again until April 5th, 2008. And their first space flight was December 13th, 2018. So the history of space travel. In 1957, Russia sent satellites to space, and then America shortly followed. In 1958, America launched the first space probe. In 1960, the first communications satellite was sent up so we could talk to whoever was in space. In 1961, the first man went to space. In 1963, the first woman went to space. In 1965, the first person to walk in space. 1966 was the first space docking. 1969 was the first person to walk on the moon. And then in the 70s is when we got interested in planets. so a lot of stuff happened with planets. But in 1971 was the first space station. We worked on the space station throughout the 70s, like that was like the main project. But in 76, Viking 1 and 2 went to Mars to search for life. And Venera 7 took pictures of Venus. Pioneer 11 went to Jupiter. Voyager 1 went to Saturn, and it discovered its rings and 11 new moons. So we also focused on that a lot. And in 1981 was the first space shuttle ever built. And here's the planets for like reference. So in the 80s, we also did a lot of planet work. In 1986 was when the Challenger exploded. This is very famous because, so they wanted to do like a lot of firsts in space. So one of the things they wanted to do was the first teacher to ever go in space. So they had like people apply, and 11,000 people applied, and Krista McCullough, yeah, she got selected, and so her whole school was watching. It was like live streamed, so it was a big deal. And after like 70 seconds after it took off, it blew up, and they all died on it. I think there was 7 of them that died. In 1984, 2 men completed the first untethered spacewalk, so they weren't like directly connected to their space stuff. In 1988, it was the first human spent over a year in space. In 1995, the first woman to pilot a space shuttle. And in 1999, that woman also became the first to complete a space shuttle mission. We also studied the sun in the 90s a lot because we had enough technology to get close enough to it to study it. And in 1999, we had a lot of shuttles go to the moon in search of life and water. In 2001, the first space tourist went up to space. His name was Dennis Tito, and he was an American entrepreneur, and he paid $20 million to Russia to take him up to space. He went to the ISS, which is the International Space Station, which is owned by like a bunch of countries. So when Russia realized they could like make money off of this, they started advertising until 2009, and they were advertising to go up to space for like a couple of days in the ISS, but they were charging $20 to $40 million to go in space. So in those 9 years, 7 people went, and they usually stayed around like 8 days, and they all paid around 20 to 30 million. So in 2015, Russia stopped advertising because they didn't have enough room because their crew kept growing. But they said they'd resume in 2019, but they never had. The first craft also landed on an asteroid in 2001, and its name was Near Shoemaker. There was really no point to it. In 2003, the shuttle Columbia exploded. This was also a big deal because it was being live streamed, and when it came back in to the Earth, like re-entered the atmosphere, it disintegrated. So a bunch of little parts were like falling out of the sky, and everyone thought it was like a meteor shower. So it was like being live streamed, and everyone realized it was actually like dead people. And there were 7 of them that died in that. In 2004, Spaceship One won the Ansari X Prize. So space breakthroughs have been happening since the late 1950s, and will continue to happen, but we'll never actually understand space fully. And this is only a few of them. So Spaceship One and White Knight. Again, that's Spaceship One, and then this is White Knight. So Spaceship One, the big project like behind it, was called the Tier 1 project. Their objective was low-cost routine access to space, and to make space tourism like a regular thing. Spaceship One, its mothership is White Knight. It's not intended to carry passengers because it can only carry 2 passengers and 1 pilot. So this was just like the first model, like the technology and stuff behind space tourism. So they envisioned there would be spin-offs of it. So Paul Allen and Burt Rutan, they like formed together to make the Mojave Aerospace Ventures company. This was formed to handle the spin-offs because they had a patent on a lot of the technology in Spaceship One, like the engine, the re-enter technology, and the oxidizers. In 2004, this company signed a deal with Virgin Galactic. That's Richard Branson. That's the founder of Virgin Galactic. So he just like kind of does everything. He's always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So he just signs deals with a lot of companies, but he's always been interested in space. So after this is when Virgin Galactic became really big. So they later formed the spaceship company. Virgin Galactic's paid off the Mojave Aerospace Ventures, and they only lasted from 2004 to 2012 when he paid them off in 2012. So before then, Virgin Galactic owned 70%, and Scale Composites only owned 30%, so Virgin Galactic kind of took over in 2004. Virgin Galactic became the full owner of the Spaceship Company and Spaceship Two, but Scale Composites is still credited for designing and building them. Spaceship One and White Knight. It was the first private manned spacecraft. Their first flight together was May 20th, 2003, because White Knight's first flight alone was in 2001. It did a lot of test flights. But White Knight is more of just an airplane designed to go a little bit higher than normal airplanes and get there quicker. They've had 17 flights in all together, and their major turning point was June 21st, 2004, when they flew past the Kármán line. They flew 62.5 miles, so they just made it right above. And here's the Kármán line to give you a visual of how high up it is. So technically they're kind of in space before the Kármán line. If you're in there, you'll think you're in space, but you're actually not. So they set records on the last two. In September 29th, 2004, it flew 64 miles above Earth's surface. On October 4th, it flew 70 miles, so it beat its own record. On October 4th, right after that flight, it won the Ansari X Prize, which was a big deal. Okay, so the Ansari X Prize. The X Prize Foundation is a non-profit organization founded in 1995. It's intended to encourage technology advancements in the country that will benefit society, basically. So it's inspired by the Orteig Prize. This was awarded to the first Allied aviators to fly nonstop from New York to Paris. Charles Lindbergh won this. It was $25,000. It was to encourage commercial flights to begin with. It's originally called the X Prize. So this one was called the Ansari X Prize because multi-million-dollar, and I don't know how to say their names, Anashia Ansari and Amir Ansari. They gave a multi-million-dollar donation, $10 million, to the X Prize Foundation to set up this award. They're now on the board of directors because this is one of the first awards the X Prize Foundation has ever done. So basically, now, if Google would give $20 million for a prize, it'd be called the Google X Prize or Amazon X Prize. So it just names each prize after whoever gives money for it. So this was the highest reward ever given so far, still in 2004. It was $10 million. In 2018, $30 million went unclaimed. It was for they wanted to make a medical device that could diagnose patients quicker than any doctor, but no one could do it in time. So there's currently 7 active competitions going on. One for $10 million, one for $20 million, one for $15 million, and then the rest kind of go down. So a lot of them have to do with cleaning the oceans, who can do that the fastest. Or a lot of them are medical now. There's not really many space ones left. But the $20 million one, it's kind of like the Ansari X Prize. It has something to do with space travel to make. I don't know if anyone's heard of the SpaceX project going on. It has something to do with that. So this was a huge part of the Tier 1 project. It's kind of what inspired them to do Spaceship One, and that led to Spaceship Two. So the technology behind White Knight. White Knight is designed to carry Spaceship One to 50,000 feet, and it will release Spaceship One, and then Spaceship One goes up on its own. It takes a little over an hour to get there. Its wingspan is 82 feet, and they have twin afterburning General Electric J85 engines. So they pick these for their cost and availability. So what you do is you add additional fuel into the jet pipe, and these are used in military situations on a lot of their planes. So it provides an increase in thrust without the weight of an extra engine. So basically before you start driving the plane or whatever flying, you let the engines burn, and they usually do 45 minutes. It was 30 for White Knight, but White Knight 2 is 45 minutes. So it's considered wet after it burns for so long, and that's when it's at its best, and it's dry if you don't burn it before. the technology behind Spaceship One. So it has hybrid rocket motors. It uses solid hydroxyl terminated polybutadiene, which is HTPV or rubber fuel, and a liquid nitrous oxide oxidizer. So this is the patent they have on these two things, which I didn't really understand why. It's all like really big words. I don't know what's so special about them. Basically, you can let the motors burn without hurting anything else in it, so it's reusable. Because a lot of like spacecraft that they use now, after it burns, it kind of burns it all up, and you can't use it again until you replace everything. This one's reusable. It has feathering wings, so when it comes back into the atmosphere, it's like very hard to come back into the atmosphere from space. It gets very hot and very pressured, so it has feathering wings to stabilize it. So the wings, how they come like up like this, they have pivots on them so they can come super high up and kind of feather, so it like makes it real smooth back in so the passengers aren't like thrown around. Burt Rutan has a patent on this engine and oxidizer. So Spaceship 2 and White Knight 2, I think it's beautiful. That's Spaceship 2, and that's White Knight. It's a lot bigger than Spaceship 1 and White Knight. December 13th, 2018. So this was a big like turning point for Spaceship 2. Mark Stuckey was the pilot. He's always planned of being in space since he was like younger, but he actually never got the opportunity because it's very hard to go to space and like get a job in that career. So in 2009, Scaled Composites hired him, and he's a testing pilot, which is one of the most dangerous jobs if you work like in the space field because you have to test everything before it's actually released to the public and like considered safe. He planned to burn the engine for 30 seconds in hopes to propel 50 miles, and he ended up burning it for 60 seconds. He said it felt very good and very smooth because it's like up to them how long to burn it really, like how it feels. Everyone waited around. There was over 1,000 people there. A lot of people from the FAI and like Richard Branson was there, and they had one person had like a earpiece in and he could hear them up in space. And their goal was to make it past the Kármán line. But when he yelled 271,000 feet, everyone like cheered. It was like a huge thing for them. And Richard Branson started crying. They were back on land 15 minutes later. So it takes White Knight to get up there. It takes a little bit over an hour and a little bit over an hour to get back down. So Spaceship 2 actually is on the ground before White Knight, even though it goes up in space way higher after it gets dropped. It's just a lot quicker. George Whitesides, he's a CEO of Virgin Galactic. He was right by like Richard Branson this whole time. He said this is right up there with childbirth in terms of nervousness levels. So it's like a really big deal to all these people, and they're really passionate about making space tourism a real thing. And Brandon Parrish, he was an engineer that built Spaceship 2, and right after it came back on land and they were like all up there, he called his girlfriend up on stage and proposed to her in front of like everyone. Oh wait, I'm gonna show a video from that day.
My first memory of what I wanted to do was to be a pilot, and that was because I was brought up in an area of Scotland where a lot of low flying was taking place. I would see aircraft flying at high speed, a very low altitude over my village on a daily basis.
Oh God.
You're okay.
Which way was one of them?
Towards Bethany.
Okay, now it's not working at all.
Okay, just hit play. It's fine.
It's really not working.
A sense of character to become a test pilot, someone who not just enjoys flying but is really interested in the science and the engineering behind it, and what makes a good aircraft, what makes a bad aircraft, and why. A desire to not just fly but to understand them at a deeper level and to try and improve them.
I'm David Cowie. I'm Virgin Galactic's chief pilot. So today is the first powered flight of Spaceship Unity. This is a major milestone in our flight test program. When the locomotor is lit, that's when it really comes alive. We've been gliding it so far, but really what it's designed to do is go into space. And so obviously it's a big step forward for the company, for everybody in the company. So today I'm going to be in Spaceship alongside Mark Stickey, and then in White Knight, Mike Masucci, Nicola Pacelli, and Dustin Mosher will take us up to 50,000 feet, or close to 50,000 feet, where we will be released. Once we're released, I will light the locomotor, and we will begin this very exciting new phase of testing on Spaceship Unity.
I often describe it as similar to, a big game. You've trained and you feel fit and ready and prepared and you know your tactics and so you're not, scared, but you're not completely relaxed either. You're kind of keyed up and ready for it. High-performance aircraft, but this is something else.
A letter to my grandchildren. My dad, your great-granddad.
Okay. So I think that's super cool. I would love to do that. I'd love to be a pilot in general for space tourism. But I don't know. That video gives me chills for some reason. So Spaceship 2 and White Knight 2. This is just some facts about them that I haven't said yet. And this is what the inside looks like if you ride in it. I don't know if everyone can see that. So reclined seats, so when you're going, because you after it drops and the engine comes on, you're literally going straight up. So the seats are back so you don't feel it as bad. And this is what the windows look like. And then you're buckled in, so after you're in space, they tell you to unbuckle and you can float around in there and stuff, and then you get back in your seat before you go back down. So the wingspan of White Knight 2 is 140 feet, which compared to the 82 feet of White Knight is a lot bigger. White Knight 2 is the largest all-carbon composite aircraft in the world. So The engine burns for like usually 90 seconds on White Knight 2. And while it's burning for 90 seconds, you're going 3 times the speed of sound. So this is a lot on like our bodies. It's 3 to 4 times what we feel like all the time, gravity-wise. The feathering is the wings when it comes back in, how the wings feather, so you don't feel it as bad. And the flight in all is about 2.5 hours, but you're only in space for 5 minutes. So you go up there for like, the majority of the time's going up in White Knight, and you go up, and that takes like a little while, and then once you're up there, you're only up there for 5 minutes, and then you come back down. The vehicle is like covered in thermal protection material, so usually you need like heat shields and stuff when you're re-entering the atmosphere because of how hot and like pressured it gets. So they have stripes painted on it, so when the stripes turn a certain color, they know that's bad and they could like blow up, so they like do something to fix it. And carbon fiber panels like line the honeycomb core of the vehicle to make it safer. So after you feather back down, once you get to about 70,000 feet above Earth, you glide for 30 minutes and then you're back on land. So how can you get a ticket? Tickets are $250,000 right now, but they say they will drop once it gets so popular, like just like anything. There is a waiting list, but they just did this to make money to like create it, because each of them were like $400 million to make it like overall. So there's the first 100 people on the waiting list paid the full $250,000 already, and then the next like couple hundred they just paid little deposits to make sure they have like a seat in the first however many flights. So some people on this list are Lady Gaga and Justin Bieber. They already paid to go into space. There is a medical examination you have to take. You have to be like overall healthy enough to go up there and be able to handle everything, and like just because of how fast you're going, and like the nerves are a big thing. You have to do zero gravity and centrifuge training. So basically training in like portals that have zero gravity, so it doesn't like, because you're like flying, that's something you've never done before. And the centrifuge is for the pressures that you'll feel, since you're feeling 3 to 4 times what we always feel. And on your way back down, you feel 6 times what we always feel, but you only feel that for like 30 seconds. So the cabin of White Knight 2 is identical to the cabin of Spaceship 2. And they do this for training purposes to like let people go in there so they're more comfortable when they're actually going into space. So the future for this, that's Richard Branson again. I think he's awesome. It's a huge breakthrough for like everything, because going to space isn't something that everyone gets to do, and now it could become a reality like very soon. Companies announced to contribute and already have. So like Amazon said once this starts they're going to contribute so much, and Google's going to contribute so much just to like keep it going. So it was originally predicted for 2012, but it obviously didn't happen. So then they postponed it to 2015, and then they postponed it to 2020. But Richard Branson just said 2 weeks ago that he plans to have his friends and family in space by Christmas, and right after that, like passengers will be allowed. So it's a lot sooner than like everyone thinks. Blue Origin is another company working towards this. They're the SpaceX company. So like in the future they'll have something just like this. It's predicted to be worth billions in the next decade. It'll help us become more familiar with space, since people will be going up there so often. It'll help space companies like Virgin Galactic learn more about space and lead to further space exploration. If we already have the technology to like do this, then we could go way further with it in the next couple of years. So fails, there has been fails doing this, just like all space exploration. October 2014, when Spaceship 2 blew up and killed one of their pilots. The other guy actually survived. There's like conspiracy theories on how he survived, because it literally blew up, but his seat ejected and he just like got out. His whole body was burned, but his parachute still opened and didn't like get damaged, and he floated down. Many others have been severely injured in the making of Spaceship 1 and Spaceship 2, just the testing and like all the engineering behind it. So the Challenger, like I said, 7 people died, and Krista was that teacher. Columbia, 7 people died when it disintegrated, re-entering Earth. Soyuz 11, 3 people died. That was actually in space, as the only 3 people to ever die in space. a window opened when they were up in space, and they all, yeah, like I said. 30 total people have died on their way to space or in space or on their way down from space, but many other have died like just in training. So the controversy behind it, space travel isn't safe at all, and it never will be. We'll never fully understand space, so it's like dangerous that they're letting just strangers go to space, a lot of people think, and like how do you really know if anyone's ready for that? Like the training behind it, but like a lot of people can like have heart attacks or whatever on their way up there. Making it a regular thing makes it even more dangerous because space travel isn't a regular thing right now, and if it's going to be happening daily, a lot more people can get injured or die from this. Then on the other side of it, like saying it's a really like huge breakthrough, the government doesn't pay any attention to it, but they just pay $20 billion to send people to Mars, but like nothing towards space tourism. So it's very dangerous. That's basically like, no one thinks it should be like allowed to just anyone. So why did I choose this? I think space is super interesting, and I would definitely do it, and I'd also love to be an astronaut, but I know that will never happen. But now it might, because there's going to be pilots, like a regular job. My opinion before, that it was super interesting but not possible and like kind of exaggerated. But now that I realize they have like 8 Spaceship 2s built and they're like expecting to do it by the end of this year, I think it's super interesting and it's going to happen in the near future, and I think that's awesome. And I think it's a super good industry. It will open up a lot of jobs, maybe for me. And I would love to go, and I'm very happy for them because they're very passionate about it, and like just seeing him cry and stuff, because I watched a bunch of videos, I just think that's so cool.